Hi guys, I am Night Winter and welcome back to another episode of Bows and Butchers. Yay! I am generally a video game streamer, but today we're doing a podcast. Okay, so for today's disclaimer, we're going to be talking about murder, obviously. It's pretty much how all of these go, am I right? Murder of adults and children. There's going to be sexual harassment. There's going to be suicide. There's going to be abuse. There's going to be pornography, both adult and child, and the harm of animals. So viewer discretion is advised. And yeah, the story has a lot. It has everything, unfortunately. So we are going into the case of Susan Cox Powell. Cox is her maiden name and Powell is her married name. Susan's husband is Josh Powell, born January 20th, 1976, in Puyallup, Washington. I don't know how to say that, so we're going to call it Puyallup. Puyallup. It's probably completely wrong. You can Google it. Puyallup. We're going with it. Josh, he had two brothers, Mike, Jonathan, and then he had two sisters, Elena and Jennifer. There's a lot of people in this. And I'm going to add a family tree too of like the families involved and like the connections. It's going to be a full family tree, okay? So hopefully that's a little helpful and hopefully you can reference that and like so you can understand all the people cuz girl, it's insane. So Josh's life growing up was actually very concerning. That's like the best I got. The relationship between his parents, his father, whose name is Stephen Powell, and his mother, whose name was Terisha Powell. Terisha. So I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But their relationship was just weird and insane. Yeah, we're gonna go with insane. Stephen randomly, out of nowhere, stopped wanting to go to church with his family. He didn't want to go to church with his family, and it was just like, it was not only that he didn't want to go to church with them anymore and that he didn't care about religion anymore, he was also becoming like extremely anti-religion. Not only was Stephen teaching the children this, but he was also instilling his insane beliefs in them. So not only was he telling them, like, you know, religion is awful and it's going to make you go to hell and all this stuff, which is really funny, but he also was teaching them to really hate women, especially the three boys. He was really instilling in them that you should hate women and that you should be rude to them, you should treat them badly. Like, it was extreme and it was just so concerning. Both Stephen and his children, Josh, Mike, and John, they would all be really abusive to Terisha. And actually, one time, Terisha asked Josh to do some household chores. I think it was the dishes, I want to say. And she said that he actually pulled a knife out on her. Like, he just grabbed the butcher knife out of the kitchen knife block thing and held it up to her and said, "Don't push me. Don't push me." And she was like, "Okay." Psycho much? So 20 years of marriage, Stephen and Terisha got a divorce in 1994. The grounds for this divorce, I'm sorry, it's not funny. Divorce isn't funny. It's just the grounds for this divorce on his end were just like, you could tell he's gone mentally and like an insane person. And like nothing against insane people, but like he's like the abusive kind of insane. You know what I mean? He claimed that the reason why they were getting a divorce is because she practiced witchcraft. Now, the reason why he thinks that she practiced witchcraft is, okay, one, she goes to church every Sunday. Church is bad. It's terrible. I don't know what's going on in his head. But she also really believed in like herbal medicine. So she would grow different things. Like she would grow poppy plants to get the seeds to help with like pain. She would grow tea leaves to make teas. And like, I mean, it was normal stuff that people do. But he called that witchcraft. She was making potions instead of making tea. It's insane. And then on Terisha's end of the divorce, she said there were a lot of issues with polygamy and pornography. It was insane because he was sharing the pornography with his young sons. They were under 18, and he was sharing this pornography with them. Like, not only is that weird because they're underage, but also sharing pornography with your family, especially your children. Like, I don't know. Please tell me I'm not the weird one for thinking that. I really hope I'm not. Also, he claimed that he should be able to have as many wives as he so pleases. And he was trying to instill that in his sons. And he was really open about it. He was just like telling his wife, I deserve as many wives as I want. I can bring them where I want, talk about them to who I want, when I want, because I deserve this. I'm entitled to this. What is happening in this man's mind? Another thing that Terisha added in their divorce papers was that Stephen has really inconsistent parenting tactics. So one day they would, do something abusive to their mom, and then he would punish them for it and like abuse them and hit them repeatedly. But then they could do the same thing, and then he's like, yeah, get it. I love that for you. Keep doing that. Keep abusing your mom. So that made no sense. It all kind of just depended on his mood, and that was it. Josh did get the worst of this abuse. I'm not sure why. I couldn't find anything that said specifically why he was getting the worst of the abuse, but this really affected him. It caused him to not be able to have a lot of eye contact with people. And actually, it was reported that for an entire year, he did not have eye contact with a single person. A single person. He also killed his sister's hamsters. It was hamsters or gerbils, something like that. She had multiple and he killed all of them. So, serial killer things. Then, at a very young age, he tried to kill himself at a very young age. He already was very messed up in the head at a very young age. And like, who wouldn't be? You're getting beat all the time. You're being taught to hurt other people. Like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I don't get him doing all crazy things, but I definitely get him being messed up in the head. At the end of the custody battle, Stephen got the boys and Terisha got the girls, but eventually Alina, she actually chose to move in with Stephen. That is insane to me. I don't understand. Like, you would think, finally getting away from the abuse, But I think he had his fingers wrapped around these people. Like, he had their minds so warped and messed up. And I think they were also scared to not be around him because they didn't know what would happen if they were against him because they didn't choose to be with him or didn't fight to be with him. I really do think that. It's insane. By 1998, Josh had moved to Washington so that he could go to the University of Washington. He met his first girlfriend, Catherine Everett, at a Latter-day Saints church in the area. They both had the same religion. They both went to the same church. So, it was love at first church day. I don't know. From there, they moved in together, and from what everyone had said and heard, things were going really well in the beginning of the relationship. But he very quickly became controlling. Are we shocked by that? Are we? I wonder where he got that from. He started telling her what she could and couldn't do. She wasn't allowed to see her family by herself. He had to come with. Now, psychologically, that makes sense because people like that, they know your friends and family, they're going to tell you like, hey, this person is crazy. leave them. We'll help you leave them. We'll do whatever we can. And he didn't want that to happen. So he was like, you can only see them, you can only visit them when I'm nearby. I have to be there. It was said that one day she went to visit a friend in Utah and he didn't feel the need to go with. And that was the time she left. She just left and then called him and said, I'm not coming back. And then allegedly she just never came back. I'm like, what's that movie? Enough with J-Lo? October 16th, 1981, in Alamogordo, I don't know if that's Alamogordo, New Mexico, is Susan Cox, soon to be Susan Powell. Her parents are Judy and Chuck Cox. She was described as very like outgoing, optimistic, like upbeat, bubbly, and very sweet and kind to everyone. She was also really devoted to her religion and like good for her. It sounds like she has a lot of good things going for her. Love that for her. And I will never get over this. She was gorgeous. I know that's not the thing that matters, but like you look at her and you're like, oh my God, that woman is beautiful. She's smart, funny, kind, sweet, happy, bubbly, like, and she's that pretty, like, girls got it all. Girls got it all. November of 2000 is when Josh meets 19-year-old Susan Cox. They meet at a dinner party for LDS, for the church that they go to. There's a little dinner party, and, they just met and hit it off. They're both Mormon, and they allegedly got along really well in the beginning. And their relationship moved very fast. They ended up getting married in April of 2001 at the Portland, Oregon temple. Pretty immediately, Susan's family did not like Josh at all. They thought he was very opinionated in all the worst ways. They thought he was really controlling, really self-centered, and they got the worst vibes from him. That's the best way I can say that. They did not get the right vibes from this man. And like, you need the good vibes. You need those. But apparently, their relationship went really well for the first couple years. So, like, go them. Go them. Josh graduated from the University of Washington with a business degree. For the first couple years, he honestly just couldn't keep a job. He was a web designer at one point. He worked in real estate at one point, and he just couldn't keep a job. For a while, they lived in South Hill, Washington with Josh's father, Steven, so that they could save a little money after the wedding. So, they could buy a house and, do everything they wanted to do. Steven grew a very intense obsession with Susan, his daughter-in-law. He would follow her around the house with a camera recorder. He would use mirrors to spy on her in the bathroom. He would read her private journals. And it was also said that he was dedicating, I wasn't clear if he wrote these or if he was just dedicating random songs to her on the internet under fake usernames. I don't know if he wrote the songs or if he just found them and then said, like, I'm dedicating these songs to this person. It's weird. All of it. He even went as far as stealing her underwear from the laundry. And from what I've seen on Orange is the New Black, they're probably dirty underwear. Yeah. It's not funny. I'm just like, ugh. In 2003, Steven confessed his feelings to Susan, and she rejected him, obviously. And he was camera recording her so much that he forgot to turn his camera recorder off for this. So there was a video recording of him doing this. Now, I think he had the camera like down by his side, while he was talking, just like had his hands down. So it was just the audio that you were getting, but it was recorded. So he did admit these feelings for her, and then she also turned him down. Josh and Susan then moved to West Valley City, Utah, to put some space between Steven and Susan. Yeah, I would be terrified if I was her, and she was terrified. That's terrifying. It's weird. It's creepy. It's uncomfortable. It's all of the bad things mixed in one. And Susan, a cosmetologist, she got a job at Wells Fargo Investments, so she was doing well. On January 19th of 2005, Susan and Josh had their first son, Charles. 2 years later, on January 2nd, 2007, they had their second son, Braden. Susan thought that moving far away and starting a family would make things better for them. She thought everything was going to be going happy-go-lucky, or at least a little better, you know? She had high hopes, and I get that. I do. Susan had made some friends through the church, the new church that they started going to when they moved to West Valley City in Utah, and it was really easy for her to make friends. She was very likable. She was a bubbly, fun, happy, kind person, so people kind of flocked to her, when everyone wanted to be friends with her. And Josh, however, was not described that way. People did not like him very much, so it was a lot harder for him to make friends. Susan very quickly met a woman named Kiersey. They became BFFs very fast. Now, Kiersey said that her and all of Susan's other friends did not like Josh. They felt like he was very controlling and he made everything about him. He was really self-centered, and they just didn't like that. They didn't think that Susan deserved that. Susan also liked to come to her friends to kind of vent about anything that was going on in her relationship. She told her friends that she was only allowed to use their vehicle when Josh authorized her to. She's only allowed to use it for certain things. She had to ask for permission. It was weird. It was very controlling, very specific. Susan said that their two main problems in their relationship were finances and faith. I know a little bit about the finances. I do not know much about the faith part. I just couldn't really find anything. So Susan mentioned a couple times faith was an issue. Josh only allowed the boys to eat once a day. All of Susan's friends knew this, and no one tried to do anything. No one turned anyone in. No one tried to help. No one did anything. They just knew and were aware. It's not like Susan couldn't just go out and get more food because Josh had a spreadsheet. He had a spreadsheet. She had to use this spreadsheet to say what food she got, how much it cost, and he pretty much only had enough in the house for him to eat and then the rest of them to eat whenever he wanted them to. And since he was keeping track of where every cent went, he didn't care where it went if he was spending. So she couldn't really do a lot. When Susan went into labor with Charles, their first son, Josh was backing up his computer, and he said that she needed to find a way to get to the hospital because he was backing up her computer. Now, as someone that streams and records all their videos, as someone that's doing podcasts and records videos, separate audios, all this stuff, I know you don't have to sit there while your computer is backing up. So why? Why? What is he doing? He needs to be there that no one else sees, So anyway, he ends up missing the birth of his first son because he needed to back up his computer. And from what I read, he didn't even come there very quickly. It was much later that he finally came to the hospital. He did not care. The relationship was also becoming really strained because, honestly, Josh started to become his dad. He stopped going to church. He didn't want to go to church anymore. And he continued contact with Stephen despite him making advances on Josh's wife. Josh was like, no, I still want to talk to him. Bro, he made advances on your wife. Like, come on. Finances. His spending got so out of hand that he had to file for bankruptcy in 2007 for $200,000. Not only that, but Susan said in a home video that she made, that he filed for bankruptcy, but he was continuing taking credit cards out in her name and still spending money. during all of that. What is happening? In 2008, Susan made a will, a secret will that Josh did not know about. I don't know who did know about it. I don't know who did, or if anyone did, I don't know. It was said to be secret, but I'm assuming that's more so on the Powell end, you know? Any Hoosers. It said, like, she specifically put in it, our marriage is in extreme turmoil. It also said, if I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. She put that in her will. That's how bad things were. That's terrifying. On December 6th, 2009, Susan, Charles, and Braden go to church. They come home, and a neighbor comes over at around 5 p.m. That was the last time that allegedly anyone outside of the household ever saw Susan again. When I say allegedly outside of the household, because, you know, we don't know for sure what happened with Josh. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know if he saw her inside the home again or what happened. On the morning of December 7th, 2009, the Powell family was reported missing after Tarisha, which is Josh's mother, and his sister Jennifer were notified that the children did not make it into daycare that day. After not being able to contact Josh or Susan, Tarisha and Jennifer contacted the police. The police then broke into the home, and they thought maybe carbon monoxide poisoning was a possibility at this point. Then they quickly noticed that no one was inside, but there were box stands pointed towards a couple wet spots in the living room that looked like they had just been cleaned with something. Weird. That morning, Susan also did not show up for her job. Her purse, license, wallet, everything was still found inside the home. Again, not really normal if you're willingly leaving, going somewhere. Like, of course you're going to bring your purse. That's where your money is. You know, of course you're going to bring your wallet. Of course you're going to bring your keys. Her phone was found later in their Chrysler Town and Country that Josh had been using. Also weird. I can't leave my phone at the car. I need that thing. Later that day, around 5 p.m., Josh returns home, and then the police want to question him. So he goes in for questioning. Mind you, he did have the boys with him. He claimed that he left Susan at home on December 7th at midnight with their sons because their sons wanted s'mores. So he took them camping in the middle of the night on the Pony Express Trail in western Utah. At midnight. When he has work the next day, they have to go to daycare the next day. That's only a couple hours before they gotta get up, and he just takes them camping in the middle of the night? Because that makes sense. Okay. So I'm no weather person. I'm no weather scientist, meteorologist, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I don't even know what it's called. I'm not one of those. But the police specifically reported that it was blizzard-like weather outside at this time. You took your children camping in the middle of the night when the conditions were blizzard-like. If you don't know what a blizzard is, it's when the snow is going like this. Okay? It's insane. Who goes tent camping in that weather? I mean, who goes camping in that weather, period? But tent camping? It's not making sense. So on December 10th, they go and they check out the area that Josh claimed they were at. And it turns out no one had camped there. No one had camped there. It had no signs of a fire. It had no signs of a tent print, you know, because it's a blizzard. And then it stopped. So there were obvious signs that people had been in the area, but not where they said they were at. So So another thing that didn't make sense, which Josh has an excuse, of course, but he had work the next day. Like I said, he had work the next day. He didn't tell his boss that he wasn't going to be at work. He claimed, I thought it was Saturday, so tomorrow would have been Sunday. So why would I need to tell my boss where I'm going on a weekend? That makes sense, but like, I don't believe you, you know? But what's frustrating to me is like, I get we're all forgetful. I get that. But when you have kids, I've never known of someone being that forgetful like that. And that's just me personally. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying, like, I've never known of someone to forget to bring their kids to school or daycare or wherever. Like, that's a pretty big, important thing, I think. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have kids. I have a cat, so what do I know? December 8th was Josh's second round of questioning, and he had rented a vehicle at the Salt Lake City International Airport. His whereabouts after leaving this airport are unknown for 18 hours. 18 hours. You're in the middle of this investigation because your wife is missing. You went missing with your children. You took them out in a blizzard to go camping and make s'mores, which, by the way, he didn't have chocolate. So he went to take them camping to make s'mores that he didn't even have the ingredients for. And he thought it was a good idea to go missing again. How warped do you have to be to think that's a good idea and that's going to make you look innocent? At 4 p.m. on December 9th, Josh calls his mother, Tricia, on a new phone that he had gotten in this 18-hour span of missing time. Why did he get a new phone? What did he need a new phone for? What was wrong with his old phone? And why did he go missing to get a phone? I don't know. This is just weird, you know? Like, during this call, he was on Interstate 84, driving towards Tremonton, Utah, and going south towards Salt Lake City. He would later tell his sister Jennifer, I was just driving laps around the city. That's it. I just kept driving laps. Okay, if all you did was drive laps, how'd you get that new phone? Did it just in the seat next to you? He is the worst liar. Like, come on. My cat does a better job lying to me when I see her sneaking back in the house. Like, you know what I mean? He claims that he was just continually getting off and on freeways. And when the police checked to see, like, you know, where he drove to, how much he drove, it turned out that he drove 807 miles. He just drove that whole time. Just drove and drove and drove and drove and drove. What was the point of that? On December 9th, after an investigation of the house, police officers found some blood, traces of blood, that they assumed to be Susan. So, you know, they took them, packed them up, and sent them off to the lab. They found $1.5 million worth of life insurance policies taken out on her. And they also found a handwritten letter from Susan expressing the fear for her life. I am going to skip to 2013 and then I'll go back, but I thought it was important to put this here. So that blood in 2013, obviously the results came back before then, but authorities were comfortable with releasing it in 2013, that some of the blood traces came back as positive for Susan, and then another trace of blood came back as a random unknown male contributor. They have no idea whose blood that is. In August of 2012, West Valley City Police released a statement basically saying that the actions that Josh did like right after Susan's disappearance were very suspicious. He immediately liquidated her retirement plan. He canceled her regularly scheduled chiropractic appointments, and he withdrew the kids from daycare. He would then go on to explain to his coworkers how to hide a body in a mine shaft in the western Utah desert. Okay. I don't know what a mine shaft is. I don't know how to operate one. I don't know what they look like. I don't know where they are. But you know how many people have gotten away with things because they keep putting bodies in mine shafts? Those bodies gotta go somewhere, and you know what? Someday they're gonna come back. I believe that. At least the bones. And we're gonna have all these bodies or bones or whatever, and we're not gonna know what to do with them. It's going to be like in Dexter when they find all of the bodies in the bags and they have to put all these people together and it's like 50 freaking bodies. What is it with these mine shafts? Why are people putting so many bodies there? It's weird. I don't ever want to go to a mine shaft. I know what happens there. If your wife went missing and you allegedly don't know anything about it or anything about her disappearance, you know, if she's coming back or not, if she's dead or alive, why are you already doing everything as if she's dead? Like, you know she's dead. If you knew she was alive, or if you knew there was a possibility, would you immediately liquidate her retirement fund? No, you wouldn't. That's weird. That's weird. It's weird. In a police interview, they talked to Charlie, who is Josh and Susan's oldest son. He corroborated and said that yes, they did take this trip. However, Charlie said that Susan came with them and that she did not come back with them. That's ruffling the feathers, shaking the old noggin. Weeks after the disappearance, a teacher reported that Charlie straight up told her, "My mom's dead." He's a kid. Chuck and Judy, which are Susan's parents, also said that teachers at the daycare told them that Braden drew a picture of a van with 3 people in it and said, "Mommy's in the trunk. Come on. Come on." Now, all this stuff happens with the kids. All this stuff happens with the kids, you know, like they did their interviews, then these random things about Charlie telling them that he knows his mom's dead, and then Braden drawing that van and saying, "Mommy's in the trunk." That stuff happens, and the police tell Josh, like, kids don't have the mental capacity to make stuff like that up. They can make stuff up, but it's usually about rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, but it's not about murder. It's not about their mom being put in a trunk and going camping with them and then never coming back. So they were like, we take to heart what kids say in these situations because they don't know what those things are. So if they see them and they say that, they saw that. Josh was very like, no. He's like, they lie all the time. They make things up all the time. That was in an interview. Like, I actually saw that part of the interview, and I was like, seriously, bro? Seriously? Then investigators make a statement saying they would like to continue questioning Josh and that they also would like to get all of the footage that has been aired of all of like the interviews and just everything on the case. Everything on the case so that they can use that information to further the interviews. On December 14th, Josh got a lawyer in relation to the case, and he became uncooperative at that point. He didn't want to answer their questions. He didn't want to talk to them. He didn't want anything to do with the police. He clearly didn't want to help find his wife. A few days later, Josh took the children to see Steven and stay with him for the holidays in Puyallup. I hope I'm saying that right. If not, I'm gonna keep butchering it. By December 24th, Josh was officially considered a person of interest at this point. He was not considered a full suspect yet because of the lack of evidence. On January 6, 2010, Josh returned with his brother Mike to pack up and move his family to Puyallup with Steven. Josh and his sons lived in Puyallup in Steven's home with both of his brothers, Mike and John, and his sister, Alina. Josh alleged that he would be renting out his home in Utah. It was reported that he returned to Puyallup because he lost his job in West Valley City, which, like, that makes sense considering you're trying to teach people how to hide a body in a mine shaft. I would hope you get fired. There was then a website that launched called susanpowell.org. Now, when you think of that and a missing person, you're like, oh my goodness, this site was put up, you know, so that people can write in tips or keep the fact that she's missing alive. This was pretty much just a website for them to slander her. There were these anonymous comments that were Steven and Josh and possibly other family members where they were like, she clearly ran off. with a man. There was a reporter that had gone missing in Nevada, and they claimed that those two were having an affair and that they ran off together, and that's why they're both missing. They've been insensitive about Susan this entire time, but to be insensitive about another person's missing case, that's disgusting. It's already disgusting. I'm not saying that's not. It is. It's disgusting and I hate it. But like to bring in and slander another person that has nothing to do with this, just making it up and putting this dirt on their name, how disgusting do you have to be? How gross do you have to be? Ugh, I can't with these people. They even tried to specifically say that they went to Brazil. Okay, if they went to Brazil, if you know this information, if you know these people, if you know where they went, have them call up the police and say, we're not missing. You know, like if you have all this personal information on them, you know where they're at, you got their forwarding address, tell the police so they're not missing anymore. Yeah, you can't. You can't. Now, in late 2010, both Stephen and Josh, instead of hiding behind the internet anonymous posts, they came out to say that Susan had a mental illnesses and she ran away with a man or, you know, by herself. So I think they were trying to take the heat off themselves. Obviously, Susan's family denied this. They were like, she loved her family, she loved her sons, she was very devoted, and honestly, she put up with all of Josh's crap. Like, she was devoted. Investigators not only started to focus on Stephen more, but they were very openly disgusted by him. In 2010, the police were notified of Stephen's insane, creepy, obsessive lust, obsession, whatever, with Susan. And so the police seized his computers, anything electronic, and wanted to see what they could find in conjunction with that. They ended up finding 4,500 photos of Susan that were all inappropriate and very clearly not by her consent. They were obviously taken by someone who was just doing things that had no idea someone was watching. Ugh. Some of them were like very close-ups of her body parts while she was in the bathroom. His own daughter-in-law. Police focused on Josh's brother Michael for a little bit after they learned that he sold his Ford Taurus to a junkyard in Pendleton. And this was very shortly after Susan's disappearance. Then he specifically ordered satellite pictures of the lot. Also weird. Police went to this junkyard and brought the cadaver I think it's cadaver dogs, abracadabra dogs. And they, what's the word? They signified that they found like decaying human remains, and that was in the trunk of the vehicle. They did take some samples of the trunk, but it came back inconclusive. There just wasn't enough evidence in there for them to actually get real results on anything. On September 14th, 2011, the police ended up searching a common campsite that Josh used, but it came up empty, so they didn't really give a lot of information on that. Relationships started becoming very, very bad between the Powell and Cox families, understandably so. The police also then raided Josh and Stephen's home. Both Josh and Stephen spoke to multiple large news outlets, reading things that are in Susan's personal journals. That is such a weird breach of privacy. That's insane. Stephen, he was so delusional that he claimed that him and Susan fell in love with each other. He wasn't obsessed with her. She was in love with him. And that was how he tried to prove that she was mentally ill. She had to be mentally ill to love him. Now I believe that. Someone does have to be mentally ill to love that man. But if that's the case, in that situation, if you have to be mentally ill for that, isn't he calling himself mentally ill too? Like, this makes no sense. It's okay if he does it, but it's not okay if other people do it. A judge permanently forbid Josh and Stephen to be doing anything with these journals. They said, No, absolutely no posting the information anywhere, no giving the information to anyone. It is not to be seen at all. And to give the journals to authorities, and that they were not allowed to have them in their possession anymore. Like, yeah, you should have given those away a long time ago. Should have given them up as soon as she went missing. But no, you're creeps. On September 22nd, Stephen was arrested for having child pornography and voyeurism. If you don't know what voyeurism is when you spy on someone. You're like looking at them through a window and they don't know you're doing it. That is very illegal. That's why peeping toms, that's why they get arrested when you catch them. It is a very illegal thing to do, as it should be. But he did not just commit the voyeurism and videotape Susan. It was many girls. And I'm saying girls for a reason. I'm not saying women. I'm saying girls for a reason. Yeah. A court in Washington gave parental rights to Chuck and Judy, which are Susan's parents, until Josh could move out of Stephen's home. They did not want children to be in the presence of someone who was known to be making, watching, whatever, child pornography. Understandably so. Josh tried to fool authorities and say he was renting a place. Well, the police checked this out. He lied. Turns out he wasn't renting that place. Why would you want your children in the house with someone like that? I don't understand. I don't get it. In September 2011, Jennifer, which is Josh's sister, she very openly said that she does think that Josh was involved in Susan's disappearance. His other sister, Elena, she had been suspicious of him too. But then later, she claimed she was no longer suspicious of him anymore. Then she goes on to state that she thinks that authorities are harassing him for no reason. No reason. I can't get past this. He was going around at his job explaining how to hide someone's body in a mine shaft. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Like, no. By this time, West Valley City had spent $500,000 on this case. On September 28th, Mayor Mike Winder indicated that he believed the case was worth all of this money and all of these resources. He said that we have more leads and tips and that we are going to get somewhere with this case. And he indicated that the case would be moving forward. In late 2011, Josh had court-ordered evaluations that he had to go through. James Manley, he was the conductor of these evaluations. He said that he thought Josh had adequate parenting skills, he had a good track record with jobs, and he had no criminal history or history of abuse. He said that Josh failed to admit his shortcomings, he had overbearing behavior, he had persistent defensiveness, paranoia, and narcissistic traits. His recommendation was for him to have supervised visits with his children with a social worker present. On the last weekend of January 2012, West Valley City Police discovered over 400 images of simulated child pornography, bestiality, and incest on a computer that was seized from the Powell household. Nobody was reprimanded for these because the pictures were illustrations. I don't care who you are. All of those things are not okay. And like, child pornography should not be recreated in any shape or form. That should not be allowed. These were still a great concern for James Manley. He did suggest a more extensive evaluation, especially extensive sexual evaluations on Josh. He also suggested a polygraph test, but no change in the visitations with his sons. He felt if he was going to see his sons, it could only be supervised with a social worker. Understandably so. Like, don't let him be alone with them. During this time, Josh's brother Mike created a Google Sites page. I don't know what that means, but he created a Google Sites page. And he wrote all over it, claiming that Susan's parents were abusing the boys. They were malnourished. They were just doing all these horrible things to the boys, and that child protective services were helping them. He also claimed that the police mishandled Susan's disappearance in a way that they were trying to point the investigation at Josh rather than actually figuring out what happened, just to harass him. No, it was pointing at him for sure. He did that all on his own. He did a real good job at making it point right to himself. Like, come on. The Cox family lawyers openly denied all of these claims, and the Google Sites page was then taken down for violating terms of use. On February 5th, 2012, social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall called 911 after taking Charlie and Braden to a supervised visit at Josh's home in South Hall. Elizabeth, who was supposed to supervise the visits between Josh and the boys, she said that Josh pulled the boys through the door and shut the door in her face and would not allow her in. Soon after this, the house exploded, killing both Josh and the boys. Authorities immediately treated this case as a double murder-suicide from the very beginning. And as they went on, they said that all of this seemed very planned and intentional. Planned and intentional. When Josh's father, Stephen, was notified of this, he didn't care. He didn't care at all. About 2 weeks after this happened, after Josh and the boys were no longer here, Stephen invoked his Fifth Amendment rights, and he would no longer talk about Susan's case anymore. He refused to talk about it. He would not answer any questions, nothing. He just went silent. Though everyone was pretty sure at this point that Stephen knew what happened, there was no proof of that, but everyone, was like, he knows something. Stephen was then convicted of his charges in 2012. After the investigation in Josh's home, it was determined that everything was planned and intentional. The explosion was absolutely planned, and he did do that on purpose. The official cause of death for Josh and both of the boys was carbon monoxide poisoning, though it was noted that the boys had significant gashes all over their bodies that matched that of a hatchet. And there was a hatchet found nearby Josh's body. Authorities believed that Josh was trying to kill the boys with the hatchet when the smoke inhalation and carbon monoxide just took him down. They also found 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline, and they could tell that it was just spread all throughout the house. People in Josh's life claimed that he sent them emails saying his goodbyes to them literally minutes before all this happened. So he wrote out goodbye, I'm murder suiciding my family, and he really planned that out. He even sent an email to his church bishop explaining how to get to his money and to turn off his utilities. It's really random to me. That's really random. The day before Josh's death, he withdrew $7,000 from his bank account and donated all of his children's toys and books. He also changed his life insurance policy to his brother's name, his brother Mike. Charles and Braden were then buried at a cemetery in Puyallup, Washington? I'm laughing because I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm so sorry. Bad time to laugh, but I can't do words, man. Charles and Braden were then buried at the Woodbine Cemetery in Puyallup, Washington. This is also where the memorial for their mother is. Josh from there was then cremated. On February 11th, 2013, almost a year after Josh and his son's deaths, his brother Mike, he then commits suicide by jumping off of a roof of a parking garage in Minneapolis. Police had questioned Mike a lot. If you remember, he abandoned his vehicle at a junkyard that cadaver dogs, they found, they alerted that there was decaying human remains in the trunk at one point. They claimed he was very evasive when he was being asked questions. And since that time, police were being very open about the fact that they thought that Stephen and Mike also had something to do with Susan's disappearance. And I don't think Mike handled that very well. I mean, obviously, I don't 100% know if his suicide was related, but is probably related. On May 21st, 2013, West Valley Police announced that Susan's case was now officially closed. Can see my kitty. Papala! On February 13th, James Manley, he was interviewed. He was the one that conducted the evaluations on whether Josh could see his children again or not. James did acknowledge that he was suspicious about Josh's role in Susan's disappearance, but he said that it was ultimately not in the scope of what he was supposed to be determining for this evaluation, and he didn't want to start crossing all of these lines, basically. He said, Josh was never charged with anything officially saying he was abusive or doing anything wrong. So he took the actual evidence that he had, and that is why he determined that. Which I hope no one blames him, because I know it has nothing to do with me, but I wouldn't blame him if it were my family. That makes complete sense. Of course, I would want to know what made him say, yeah, he's fine to see his kids. I would want to know what made him determine that. Everything he just said, that makes sense. But just thinking of it as a person and looking back at what happened, if you're related to them, you'd be like, why? In 2013, Jennifer, John's sister, she came out with a memoir. If you don't know what a memoir is a book about your own life. Or, the writer's life. She wrote about the abuse that happened in her household growing up and the abuse that happens in different types of relationships, whether it's family, friend, or romantic. And she tries to help distinguish what little signs are, like little red flags and different signs that you could have that you might miss, to help people be able to determine that and know when to leave or get out of those situations. Eventually, the Cox family sued the Department of Social and Health Services, stating that they put Josh's parental rights over the health and safety of Charlie and Braden. A jury did rule that DSHS was negligent in this situation, and they were granted $98 million to the estates of Susan's two sons. Some of these terms like this, I try to Google it, and I'm Googling, and I read it, and I'm like, I didn't understand a word of that. The Cox family also pushed lawmakers to pass certain bills due to this case. So when it comes to parental rights, the person that is being questioned on whether they are involved or not in a murder, they get parental rights removed or revoked. Because, that makes sense, if someone is possibly involved with killing their wife, they might not be too against killing their children, So that's amazing that they did all this. I'm glad that they sued and held DSHS responsible. And I'm also glad that they got these bills passed because, yeah, that makes sense. Stephen Powell was released from prison in 2017, and then he died in 2018 from natural causes. Oh, darn. To this day, Susan's remains have not been found. She still remains a missing person. The majority of people still believe that Josh is responsible for her death. And in March 2018 began the Cox family's process of trying to get Susan declared dead. And they want the reason on the death certificate to be by homicide. So that is the story of Susan Cox Powell. Horrible, horrible, horrible. thank you guys for coming and watching. I hope that you enjoyed and that you come and watch my next one. And in the meantime, if you ever want to interact with me, you can always watch my gaming streaming. I do stream on here, I stream on Twitch, I stream on TikTok. I have all of my links, so make sure that you check that out. If you have any suggestions for me, if there's anything, any cases you would like me to cover, put them in the comments and I definitely will check them out and maybe I'll do one. So I hope that you guys have a good rest of your week. I'll see you next time.